Poppins Returns is a decent movie. I saw it, I gave a review of it, and I thought it was actually a pretty good movie. But even so, as high as the Disney pedigree is and as huge as the reputation is of the original Mary Poppins, this Mary Poppins Returns underperformed at the box office. And Aquaman, even though it opened the same weekend as Aquaman, Aquaman pretty much crushed this movie. And I have about 6 reasons why Aquaman was able to do that, and I will list them right now. Number 1, Warner Brothers had a great marketing and release strategy for Aquaman to both, get ahead of Mary Poppins and talk of Mary Poppins. Aquaman dominate the conversation and basically crowd out any buzz, shove it out of competing movies opening at the same time in the US, like Mary Poppins Returns and Bumblebee. Most people weren't paying any attention to Mary Poppins and Bumblebee on social media, like on Twitter, when, Warner Brothers had those preview screenings in the United States before its, United States release date. Aquaman was trending on Twitter just from, I think the first preview screening. And before that, it opened in China before it hit the US, and China loved it. It had these huge China opening weekends, and, that was huge news that dominated the Hollywood media conversation around that period, like in early December. So by the time Mary Poppins Returns opened December 21st here in the US, people weren't really focusing on that much. They were focusing the talk, and Warner Brothers engineered this, most of the talk was all around Aquaman. And I think that helped with the buzz and the hype for the movie. Number 2, Aquaman's a huge blockbuster movie, a blockbuster comic book movie. And these days, superhero movies, because we get so many of them, they're now like the major, action release usually around when they come out. And so a lot of people on Christmas, most people were like, let's go see that big holiday action movie, right? I mean, it's a precedent that I think was set recently by Star Wars a couple of years ago, or 4 or 5, or maybe it was longer than that, with The Force Awakens. And, Star Wars doesn't have a release this December. This past December, they didn't. So there needed to be a de facto action movie, and that was Aquaman. And Aquaman was able to be the blockbuster movie du jour. And so Mary Poppins Returns was counter-programming, I guess, so to speak. Like less spectacular counter-programming. It wasn't an action movie, so nobody was going to look to Mary Poppins Returns for that same kind of, holiday thrill that Aquaman gave them. Number 3, Disney made the erroneous decision to open Mary Poppins Returns at the same time as Aquaman. I think initially they were hoping that Mary Poppins Returns could, overpower Aquaman and embarrass it and be the #1 movie that weekend, and Aquaman and DC would be, have their tail between their legs. That didn't happen, and Aquaman made thunderously much more money than Mary Poppins Returns. I know I used thunderously wrong, but it basically stormed the box office. And I think, had Disney originally released Mary Poppins on a different weekend, or even on Christmas Day as they originally intended, and not, December 19th, 2 days before Aquaman opened on December 21st, it would have made more money, on its opening weekend, and it would have people would have been talking about it, better. The narrative around Mary Poppins Returns wouldn't be, Aquaman crushed it. It would have been like, oh, it's #1 on Christmas Day. It's a great holiday movie. The timing was bad. Both Mary Poppins Returns and Bumblebee each would have done better if they had, as they should have had, their own opening weekends or opening days. But these days, I think because studios, want to cripple each other, and they're trying to release so many potential blockbusters, there aren't enough weekends in the year to release each one. And in Aquaman's case, I think the other studios thought that DC was weak and they could open their blockbusters the same weekend and slap DC in the face. But that didn't happen. And in Mary Poppins' case, it was pretty embarrassing, I think. Number 4, Mary Poppins Returns is a sequel to the classic original Mary Poppins that opened in 1964 starring Julie Andrews. And that movie the original one is seen as a classic, an iconic pop culture, moment. And so a lot of people, I think, were thinking did they need to reboot? Not even reboot, make a sequel to Mary Poppins? Why not just leave that iconic, movie alone? What do we need this for? I don't think a lot of people were like, oh yeah, they need to make a new Mary Poppins movie. I think, in a lot of people's minds, they thought that Mary Poppins should have been left alone, or there wasn't much of it a hotness factor. Let's see the new Mary Poppins. The old one was just fine enough, right? I mean, why mess with the classic? I mean, this movie has to live up. Whenever you make a reboot or a sequel to an iconic movie, a legendary movie, you have so much to live up to that it's almost like, why do it? Number 5, Mary Poppins is an older property. It was big in the 60s and, a few decades afterwards, and people still know about it today. But I don't think that little kids these days really care that much about Mary Poppins as little kids in the 60s, right? I mean, a lot of little boys and girls aren't as excited to see Mary Poppins as they might be to see, let's go see Black Panther or Aquaman or, Frozen, right? Mary Poppins Day is like the big movie for little kids that may have passed. Like, there weren't as many of them who'd want to see it unless their parents, I think, were dragging them to go see it. Because Mary Poppins, the original one, was a kids' movie, kids' family movie. And this one, it's just not the same because people have moved on. It's like 30 or 40 years later or more than that. And people are kind of, little kids today are kind of like, Mary Poppins, who's that? At number 6, the songs in Mary Poppins Returns weren't that memorable or catchy. The original 1960s one, there was like Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. What is it? A spoonful of sugar. Is that the same song? Whatever. Those songs, right? And people today still know those songs. Mary Poppins Returns doesn't have the soundtrack that's anywhere close to being that catchy or memorable. There are no songs from this movie that are going to be in pop culture for the next, 40 years or more, like in the original Mary Poppins Returns. Nobody, Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. There's no song in this movie like that that's going to carry, on for decades. And I feel that if Mary Poppins Returns had a better, awesome soundtrack, it would have made more money because it's a musical and more people would have seen it. And it would have, it would be more important in pop culture and in cinema. So there we have it. My 6 reasons why, Aquaman drowned Mary Poppins Returns financially. I know it is a good movie. And, most of the reviews, if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, although I think Rotten Tomatoes is kind of overrated, it is, got a higher score than Aquaman's, but even so, audiences didn't really seem to care that much, or else they would have seen it in larger numbers. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube and subscribe to the channel because I appreciate your viewership, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.